Welcome everybody, Kickin It Season 2. We are joined by German legend, World Cup winner, former coach of the US men's national team, of Germany, of Bayern Munich, to name just a few, former coach of these guys, that means as well. When was the last time that you guys actually all spent time or saw each other? What was the last connection?
Probably playing with the national team before I had my heart stuff. And then since then, he was reaching out, wishing me the best and checking on me and seeing how all that stuff was going. And we've kind of stayed in touch a little bit over the years, but we haven't seen each other since the last time probably that coached me in person, right?
Yep, right. And I never had the honor to coach Charlie.
And he brought
personally.
me a gift.
You're not the only one. I got the gift too.
With a bicycle kick from his time at Bayern Munich. Hey, appreciate you. Thanks, Coach.
But you brought something up, and I didn't know when I was going to ask, but I wanted to ask eventually in this interview because I never had the opportunity to play for Jürgen. So I had the cracks in 2009, and that prevented me from playing in the World Cup in 2010. I remember you covered it for ESPN, I believe, as an analyst.
Yeah.
And, you know, my goal was to get back eventually, not on the pitch, but on the national team. And so when you took over, you know, I thought, oh, this would be a great opportunity as a striker to learn from one of the greatest strikers to ever play the game. And, you know, I pushed to the very end. But did I get on your radar? Was I close? Did you have those conversations?
You were definitely on the radar, Charlie, yeah. We followed you, and I always asked, especially Tab Casey Keller, we always had a discussion about, you know, all these things that happened to you after the accident. And no, you were on the radar, you know, but then other players came up on the radar too, step by step, and so we decided to go with the other ones in that moment, but you were followed, definitely.
With hindsight, did you feel like you should have been selected, or did you feel like, okay, that's fair, I understand?
Completely fair. I think, to be honest, what I was hoping for was just a January call-up.
Okay.
That for me was what I was really just angling, you know, to get one more opportunity to put on the shirt. Because I knew how different my body had changed, you know, from the accident. You know, I didn't have the same mechanics, but I thought, you know, as close as I probably got was the 2014 run to MLS Cup final, and Jermaine Jones was on our team, and I know Lee Wynn had a fantastic season, but I kept asking Jermaine, hey, how close do you think I am? You probably talk to Jürgen all the time, you know, put in a good word for me.
And he did. Jermaine did. Yeah, Jermaine came up and talked to you. Kind of watch him more. And I said, I watch him, believe me. Our coaches watch him, and we're just going kind of a different route right now with the guys up front. But I should have given you a call.
Hey, no,
accept that.
I didn't realize. For some reason, I assumed that you had worked under Jürgen. That's my bad. I didn't realize that.
No, and I was always curious. So I think everything happens for a reason. So it's awesome that we're getting the opportunity to sit here and talk to you, because I think for the rest of my life I would have wondered, you know, did you ever have me in mind, or like, you know, think about bringing me on? So that's good to know.
That's crazy. You talk about January camp. I was like, bro, I hated those January camps.
What's to hate about January camp?
It's just fitness, man. It's just a lot of fitness and...
Under every coach, or specifically under Jürgen?
All coaches.
The nickname for January camp was Camp Cupcake. And the reason for that was it was typically most of the Major League Soccer Americans, the players that were playing in Major League Soccer, because it's not a FIFA window. So, you know, all the players are playing in Europe.
Right.
And, you know, naturally the U.S. coach would call upon all the players who could play, and that would be the players who were coming off of off-season to play in the January camp. And it gives the coach a good opportunity to get a good eye on the local talent, essentially.
You were fully aware that players did not enjoy January camp?
Oh, totally. I was totally on their side, because as coaches, we didn't want to have the January camp either.
Oh.
Because at the end, the January camp was there. One thing was to kind of reduce the amount of off time for the players, because it was too long, the MLS players. So it was mainly the MLS players coming in. The main reason why the Federation does the January camp is because they have 2 television slots to fulfill.
Okay.
So they find 2 teams, maybe from Scandinavia, that have a similar break, or South America or Central America, just fill them in with 2 names and get 2 games out of it, so they can fulfill their TV contracts, you know. the good thing about the January camp certainly was to see some players that you haven't seen before. Call in players, younger players, just promising players, and see how far they can take it, you know, and scout for the next upcoming games. I remember Jeff Cameron was one of those players I saw the first time in the January camp. Said, "Oh, he's good, he's good." So you were happy to find a couple of players, but to do the work, to put the work in, you know, unfortunately was necessary.
Did you used to have a lot of cupcakes to lose in those January camps?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, when you're younger, like you talk about, I mean, it was my breakthrough to do January camps. Bruce Arena was the coach when I first started going into those, and it kind of gave him my shot to kind of shine. And without the January camp of 2006, I don't know if I break into that squad for the World Cup. So by having a good January camp, being fit, scoring goals, that's what allowed me to make the team to play in that World Cup and get a goal in that World Cup that allowed me to get my move to Europe. But on the flip side, towards the end of my career, after coming back to MLS, and you talk about it, I mean, if you want to be the best, no offense to MLS, it is better to be in Europe, but being 33 going to a January camp as opposed to 23 was like a different vibe. That you're like, oh no, we got to do this and beat test and throwing up and all that kind of stuff. But it's a grind and it's part of it. I mean, the positive side is it does make you better to start the MLS season on a better note because you're being pushed so much and it makes you sharp. But a little bit of you's like, oh fuck, I don't want to do this, you know.
Did you ever suggest to the Federation that they get rid of it?
Yep.
How did that go down?
No, it didn't go well. No, I mean, they said, listen, we have to fulfill these 2 dates for television contract. So they said, we have to do the January camp, simple as that. So I said, but it's kind of, no, I mean, again, there are a couple of good things about it. You see young players coming through, you can work with the players and you have always fun being with the players. But it was just not, I didn't see much of a sense to it, you know, shooting them up from 0 to 100, then they go back to the MLS teams and maybe, you know, being even more prone to an injury because the MLS teams haven't even really started yet. So then they slow down again and then they shoot them up again, you know. So there was a lot of talks about that, but I understood at the end of the day that they had to do them because of those two games for TV.
When you're judging talent, what are the things that you look for first when you're assessing a player?
I think we, coming up from the inside of the game, you know, growing with the game, I think we look always at the technique first, you know, how technically gifted that kid is, you know, and what he can do already, how he reads the game, how he, you know, advances the game already, you know, how he sees everything developing. And the game has become a lot faster than in my days, for sure, you know, and so the stuff that the younger players now deal with is very demanding. And when you see that now in young players that they're capable to think ahead, you know, to already decide what to do with the ball before they receive the ball and stuff like that, it's fascinating to see how fast they do it, you know, and with what speed they're doing it. I think we all have, you know, going through decades then in the game, the capability to judge players very quickly. If we would watch now a 12-year-old team play, we would see within 5 minutes who really has talent and who will take more time to develop the same talent, you know, because it's just given to us.
How do you look back at your time as coach of the US men's national team? Do you reflect on it positively? Are there frustrations there for you?
No, I'm very, very grateful. I mean, I had 5.5 years with these guys. They were fantastic. I learned a lot. I grew as a coach. I matured a lot by myself, you know, figuring out how their brain kind of ticks. And it was huge learning curve for me. And we had a lot of fun. I mean, we really had fun. We played the World Cup in Brazil, obviously. Then the Copa America 2016, getting into the Final Four. A couple of games in between, you know, when he scored in Italy, we beat Italy in Italy, first time ever, you know, that first time ever we won in Mexico. Then we went to some places where, you know, the US didn't do well so until that point, and then we beat them, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Against Czechia, we were down 2-0 at halftime. And I didn't know what to say at halftime. I said, shit, they might give us 4 today. And I said, I remember that they were kind of devastated in halftime. I said, oh. And I said, you know what, guys, we are totally into that game. We'll turn this around. And they were looking at the guys crazy.
She touched on what are your overall thoughts on your time with the U.S. I want to go back to when you decided to take the job. What did you think about that head coaching position for the U.S. men's national team? What did you think of the typical American player at that time? What made you decide that I want to take this job?
I mean, I came to the U.S. in 1998, mainly because of my wonderful wife, Californian, and we decided then to raise the kids in California, and from that moment on, you start to live the American way, and you learn about the American way of life, and you adore a lot of things, which I did already before, and I felt like it's a huge privilege, it's a huge honor. It's also a huge opportunity because the player material coming out of the United States just over the years, already in the early 90s. So way before I then, decided to become manager, was tremendous. I mean, you had a generation of players, in the '90 World Cup, when Paul Caligiuri qualified the team to that team, then the '94 with Tab Ramos and Claudio and all that guy, and Casey Kellers and Brad Friedels of the world, and then Clint's generation came in, and you had always fantastic players. Also, not only playing in Europe all over the place, but also here. Then the league grew. So I saw the league growing, and yes, did I say that this is lacking, but that was not the point. The point was to grow the game, and this is what happened those days, and I felt like I'm a little bit part of that then. I can help it in my own way, and so I enjoyed every single day of coaching the U.S. team.
When you took the job, though, was it more like, all right, it was more than just coaching. It seemed like there was a lot on your plate, right? When you took the job, and what was your responsibilities? Not only was it coaching the first team, but was it also helping changing the path of youth development? What was all the stuff that was on your plate? I was just...
Yeah, I mean, you felt like a bit of thrown into position in a good way to connect the pieces, I mean, I had to learn a lot about the college system here, the school system, the educational system, which is completely different to the rest of the world. Then the league is just starting and trying to get itself, growing. And then you have the players overseas, and I became, for the players, also a connector, because I could call any coach I wanted to in Europe, and tell, I think you should have a look at Clint, he's ready for the next level, or at Mo, I remember when he went to Stoke, or Jeff Cameron or Brek Shea, and the coaches called me. So not agents. It was always the coach calling me and said, "What do you think about this player, about that player?" So I felt like I'm just connecting, and I enjoyed that because I could help. I could help in my own little way, to get the players maybe from A to B or to another level and experience that. But the level has always been very good with American players, and the reputation of American players also in Europe has always been very positive, because every one of you guys that went overseas left a good mark, left a good impression. Eric was one of the first ones, trying it in Germany, and they threw things at him, verbally and stuff like that. He told you guys too, and yeah, but he went through that and became far more mature and dealt with it, and so I felt a bit like a connecting piece in that.
I guess the way I look at you in US soccer is almost kind of like a revolutionary in some ways. Like there were lots of things that you wanted to change or see kind of done differently to improve the system, coming from the European background that you came from. Did you feel that there was kind of unfinished business stuff that you weren't able to get through, that you would have loved to see change, or were there frustrations there?
No, I mean, frustrations. I wouldn't say frustration. I mean, you always want to do everything as good as possible for the job you're doing, and no matter where you are. And, I thought, 2014 World Cup, for example, was exceptional in Brazil. We get in there, we beat this first goal against Ghana after a minute. we were freaking out, and then we played Portugal, and we had
Should've
Portugal.
won.
We should have beaten Portugal until the very
Lost
last
the ball
second.
in the midfield, last minute.
Yeah, and so imagine that we would have had 6 points ahead of Germany. Then third game against Germany, my Germany that actually I kind of built, and I badly wanted to beat them. So you go through those experiences, and then came the round of 16 game with Belgium, which we played a good game against Lukaku and the Bruyners of the world, and
could have won.
We could have won, and that was a moment where I kind of was left a little bit empty in my stomach, because I thought, you know what, we could have beaten them. You know, it's not, and I felt like that in America. Then the reception was, great job, very well done, out of the group of death. Everybody was happy. You know, I remember the president called, and the players responded and said, I mean, we should have gone further, I thought, you know. So there came probably my German part through, and I got angry because I said, I want more than that, you know. And I think throughout the years, American teams almost all the World Cups from 90 on, you know, and where there was more possible in that way, right?
Yeah.
I thought, you know, and I don't know if it's a belief thing only, a kind of a mental thing, because at the end of the day, if you want to win a tournament, a big tournament like a Copa America, European Championship, or a World Cup, you have to have a brutal belief, and also the willingness to suffer and to deal with pain and all these things. And there sometimes I thought maybe they're okay with reaching the round of 16 or the quarterfinals and
that being enough.
And that being enough, you know. And I thought, no, I know that some guys, it's not enough for them, you know. In the 80th minute, I tell you, gotta go and gotta go do that sprint, and you're gonna die. But that is what players then do, you know. And the big teams, they push it completely over the limits, and then that's why they win it, you know. But I was at the Spain-England game, and I thought England is in the game. After they equalized, and said, now it's going to be finally, you know, they're waiting for that since 1966, you know. But then they went backwards again. So something in their brain basically tells them, okay, it's okay to be now 1-1, we are even, but actually we don't really believe in it that we can do it.
Yeah.
It's a mental thing, because the players, they have all the quality in the world to do. And I think the American teams throughout the time periods had a lot of quality. Go through every roster of every World Cup since 90 of the US team. Every team probably would say we could have gone further.
Could I ask you something to go back to that 2014 Belgium game? Because, you know, for me, I was watching it as a fan, as a supporter. I was willing you from Boston to get to that quarterfinal. And you're playing Belgium, it's tough. And that chance falls to Wando and just misses. And we've seen Wando do it time in and time again in Major League Soccer. Does part of you feel that if Landon was a part of that group, that it may have been different? Like that if Landon was coming off the bench, that could have been the game changer?
If you talk about a specific moment, for sure, you know, if you switch now this player with that player, because, you know, the qualities that each have are different. When Wando missed that chance, the flag actually was up. You know, I looked at the linesman, and the linesman put the flag up, and if he would have scored it, would have given offside, you know, for whatever reason. You know, and I told that Wando after the game, I said, Wando, you know, please don't blame yourself now, because I mean, I saw him putting it up.
But I also had a chance to tie it up with that set piece we did.
Yep.
And then he made the kick save.
Yeah. No, I mean, with Landon, the discussion was not his capabilities, you know, what he could have given to any team at any time, because he was a fantastic player. The decision why we didn't take Wando to Brazil was simply that 2 years prior to the World Cup, he took a year off. Then it took him very, very long time to come back, you know. So that was a very slow season he had then with the Galaxy to come into the roster. And we had to make the decision basically 2 or 3 weeks prior then to go down to to South America. And at that point in time, we just made our evaluation and said, you know what? It's not fair now. I mean, we all know what Landon can do, but it's not fair to the other guys that worked their backs off all this time, you know, and solidified their spot. And we just think in that specific moment in time, the other ones are ahead of him. Huh?
I feel what you're saying in that situation. I agree in the sense of you have an opportunity to have someone that could be there, right? So say, like you go out, you plant the crops, you pick the crops, and then you go cook the food, and then the person shows up and just wants to eat the food, then they didn't suffer during that process when they could have. You know what I mean? And by taking that time off, I understand a reason why you would leave a player back because they didn't suffer with the team and you felt like other players deserved it. I do think his quality would have made a difference coming off the bench, but at the same time, I respect the fact of you making a tough decision because if you're not there during the tough times, it's a tough job for the coach to have that culture and to have that right mentality of players that you're going to bring to go there and get it done. And to be fair, a lot of the players that you brought, especially the German players you brought in for that tournament, made a big difference, whether it was Brooks, whether it was Jermaine Jones, whether it was Julian Green, all those guys scored. So, you know, you made good decisions.
How did Landon take that, though?
Oh, no, he didn't take it well. I mean, that's totally understandable. And he probably will not forgive me for the rest of his life that I made that decision. But it was a purely professional decision to make. And this is part of a coach's life that you have to tell players at a certain moment in time in their careers that, you know, that they are fading out now and younger ones are coming in. And this is probably one of the most difficult parts of your job. Having that conversation, or the conversation I had, I will never forget that, with Landon and with the other 6 players at Stanford when we were preparing for Brazil 2014, they were difficult. You know, you sit each other, you know, across and you're crying, you know, but you gotta present your opinion, you gotta present your ideas and your thoughts, and Landon was deeply, deeply disappointed. I took Landon to Bayern Munich, you know, a couple of years before that, give him a chance in the Bundesliga, but I knew, you know, he will be devastated.
When you say he didn't take it well, does that mean it was loud, it was upset, it was emotional? Like, what's not taking it well?
No, I mean, he just said clearly, I totally disagree. He said he disagrees. He thinks he deserves to go to Brazil. He thinks he's better than maybe who I take with, you know, to Brazil. And that is totally fine, you know, because he sees it from his perspective and very uniquely and rightfully from his perspective. And I see it from a bigger picture perspective. I need to put together a squad of 23 players that go through thick and thin now the next couple of weeks. I need energy, I need support, everybody is supporting each other. So I need to put the puzzle together the way I believe in, because ultimately I'm responsible for it. But those decisions, they hurt. Those moments hurt, you know. You gotta tell somebody you're not part of this now. And yeah, but it's part of your job as a coach.
Did the team behind closed doors question that decision?
I mean, it shook the team up, but at the same time, I mean, he's the manager, he's the boss, he makes the decisions, right? And you go with what he decides on.
I spoke to a couple of guys, and they said, they were all like, oh, I can't believe that happened, but I was selected, I'm in that chosen few, and it kind of galvanized the group to be like, all right, we're selected to go out and do the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I respect
Or on the other hand, I think Mo said, oh, if Landon didn't make it, then I can understand that I didn't make it, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, I respect the fact that you made a big decision there, right? And part of that is if you had the opportunity to suffer with the team and you chose not to come, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? You have to earn it. And not to say that he didn't do it throughout his career, but at the same time, we could have used his help away from home. Those away games in World Cup qualifying were tough, you know? And to not have you there,
so there would have been resentment
and then to show up at the end, I do think he would have made a difference. But at the same time, all you can control is what you can, and go there and do a good job. And we got out of the group of death. We had a striker that go down in the first half, Josie Altidore. We had to completely change the way that we played. But you know, you gotta shake things up.
I asked Jürgen how he looks back on his time with the U.S. men's national team. How do you look back on the Jürgen Klinsmann era?
I mean, I think it was some of the best years of my career, not only for club, but for country. You know, making me captain, even though that wasn't kind of the guy that I was, but it forced me to be, you know, a better player and to take more responsibility. And I liked the strength of schedule that we did. I think that was something also that was different.
Better opposition.
Yeah, playing the better competition and playing away from home in those places, whether it's Italy, whether it's Slovenia, whether it's wherever in Europe, and testing yourself against better teams, because how can you get a mentality of believing unless you're doing that? So when I look back on those years, those are some of my best years, you know, not only for club, but also for country.
What made you want to make him captain? Because he says he wasn't that kind of guy. Did you think he wasn't that kind of guy?
No, because he was already leading by example. You know, because the hierarchy of a soccer team is determined by the quality of the players. So the players, they sniff each other in training, and they know exactly who's the boss.
If you look at this current U.S. men's national team group, you know, you have Christian Pulisic, who you brought through the system. What kind of coach do they need to take it one step further, in your opinion? Because you know what kind of coach you see the potential of this group?
Well, I think they need a partnership with a coach that gives them the drive, the determination, and also the belief that, you know, it's time to prove a point. I think there's so much talent in this American team. Look at where they're all playing. You know, in my days, it was always said, okay, half hour in Europe and a half hour here. You know, then MLS complained saying, you know, Jürgen wants to send everybody to Europe, which was not the point, you know. The point was, you know, play in the best competition possible, and if you play here, it's no problem, then play here. But I think now they're playing in very strong leagues. MLS improved dramatically in the last 10, 15 years. It's a completely different game today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So the quality of the players is really good, you know. Now, when you go into tournaments, now you need to kind of set the right tone and set the standards, and set the standards really high, because, you know, now you're approaching a World Cup in 2 years from now in your own country, and with home support, there's a lot possible. So I wish for that group of players, Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams and Christian, I wish that they build now the belief towards this tournament that they can really can go far. I often said, you know, if you can beat Ghana in the group stage, or Portugal, you know, we should have beaten them in Manaus, why can't you beat them in a round of 16 or in a quarterfinal, semifinal? It's the same team. And that's where the other one have an advantage, you know, Brazil, Argentina, and Germany, and Italy, and Spain, because they are used to kind of think always till the end of the tournament. Their brain is wired till the semifinal, final. They would never let their families go home earlier. They book it always till the end. And if you lose earlier, then, oh my God, you change your flight. But that's over the decades what grew in them, you know, this belief. They say, you know, we belong in the top 10 in the world, so we want to go until the end of the tournament. And I think it's such a talented squad now, like the previous ones were also very talented, but maybe the belief was not as big yet. But
do you think they have more quality than the 2014 team?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, quality was never the issue. I think we had tremendous amount of quality, that team, and all fronts. You know, Tim Howard in goal, fantastic. You know, and our backline to midfield with Michael Bradley and Jermaine Jones and Kyle Beckerman, you know, and Josie. I mean, Josie doesn't get injured in the first game right away. I mean, Josie was absolutely on his peak. You know, I mean, there were a couple of players I wish through my time, these 5.5 years, I wanted to have them healthy. You know, Gucci was one of them. A healthy Gucci, imagine that. I mean, his rock is incredible. You know, and Josie was another one. You know, if Josie would have been healthy throughout his years, I mean, he could have killed anybody up front with him and stuff like that. But I think now, for the next years coming up, it's more a mental topic to discuss or to debate. It's a player's game. You, as a player, decide how far I want to take it. You know, I mean, I had Franz Beckenbauer as my coach, legend, obviously, but he didn't need to tell me anything. You know, I badly wanted this, and I was going to the extreme to get it. You know, and so all the coaches I had at the end of the day said, you know, it's yours. It's yours here to grab it. You know, it's your World Cup. You know, make it your World Cup. You know, make it unforgettable for yourself. You know, and I played in a generation of players. I had Lothar Matthäus next to me. It was an animal. You know, it was driven only by the ambition of winning.
Do you think that's missing in this current generation?
I think that the sky is the limit for any athlete, and you determine how far you can take it.
Do you see any obstacles right now, whether it's youth development in this country, whether it's any obstacles in Major League Soccer or U.S. Soccer that are preventing us from getting there? Do you see anything that needs to be changed or moved?
There are always elements that you can improve and whatever. You know, you can argue, should have a promotion relegation system with USL, you know, which I wish it would be there. I think it would give a more dynamic to it. There are always things, you know, that you can argue. You know, the college level, you know, it's only a couple of months a year. You know, it doesn't really feed players into the professional system and stuff like that. But, I mean, millions of kids are playing the game here in the US, and there's always a way to come through and fight through and find a way through, if it's then at the end of the day MLS or if it's going to Europe. And now that all happened the last 30, 40 years in this country, and it's an amazing development if you look at it from an outside perspective or from above. And now I think it's just more down to the fact, are they ready to prove the point that they can beat the shit out of teams that have big names in a World Cup, in a big competition? You know, like we went into Italy, we thought, okay, Italy, whew. And suddenly we beat them, and then we looked in the locker room and said, shit, we just, you know, beat Italy there. And the Italians or other nations, you know, they look at the US as well, the way that it's not going to be easy to beat them. You know, so that tells them already in their mind that it's also possible that we might lose actually that game, you know, against the United States. So they're not looking at the United States anymore like maybe 40 years ago. So because the game evolved so much and improved so much, and your players, you know, came through generations of great players, you know, every World Cup had great players in it, that you can have now the confidence to say, you know what, we're going to go in the next tournament and we go far.
So what's the next adventure for you?
I have no idea what a next adventure could be.
What would be your dream scenario?
I mean, I hope with the South Korean team, you know, until that fight happened between these two players, I hoped, you know, we're going to take them to the World Cup 26 in the US, because it's a very good team, and they could make it far. They really could make it far. You have players like, you know, Son and Kim Min-jae, Bayern Munich, and Kang In-lee at Paris and stuff like that. So I wouldn't mind if a team comes along that goes to the World Cup 26 and I can maybe put a mark on it.
So you love America. You love America, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you'd be open to an MLS job?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're open to anything. I mean, I never thought I'd coach Bayern Munich suddenly, and then I never thought I'd coach South Korea. You know, things happen overnight, and it's not that I'm planning on it, you know. So in the meantime, I can do other things as well. But no, you never say no to anything.
Find some new talent for us, you know?
Huh? Maybe do that together.
Hey, I'm getting my badges.
I don't know anyone else with coaches, man. I don't know about this guy.
You said you never wanted to coach. You never expected to go that route.
I never expected to coach. I mean, when I stopped playing in '98 after the World Cup in France, where I came here, we had a boy 1 year old at that time. He's now 27. And I started a new chapter in my life. You know, went back to school and then started more the business path of things. And then in 2004...
You went back to school to study what?
it was computer stuff, it was business. I did actually my MBA during COVID, finally, caught up with that. And then my former coach, Bertie Vogts, came in 2004 and said, oh no, it was 2000, and said, well, we do a coaching course for the former World Cup and European champions, and you want to do that, with them? And I said, yeah, and at least I have the badge, I don't know if I need it or not. And then 2004, Germany came, and they were in real trouble after losing in the group stage in the Euros 2004 in Portugal, and they knocked at the door and said, can we talk? And so I talked, and next day I was coach of Germany. At least I had the credentials. But I knew I need people around me that did that work already. So that's why I chose Joachim Löw as my assistant, because he was already head coach for many years, very experienced, and I chose then the coaching staff accordingly and had that experience. But I never thought really I will be on the front line. But when an opportunity like this comes up, then you test it out, and when you test it out, then you suddenly feel like, this is fun. I really enjoy that.
It seems in general that you don't harbor ill feelings towards anybody in any kind of sphere, whether it's South Korea, whether it's US men's national team. Is that just kind of your philosophy in life, that you don't allow those things to get to you?
Well, it's a choice that you have, moving forward. You're moving forward with negative feelings about a negative moment that happened. Do I disagree with couple of things that happened? Absolutely, I disagree. But whatever happened, and I cannot change it anymore.
Were you always like that? Or have you had to grow into that?
No, I had to grow into that. I had to learn about that. And I think I started to learn that as a player, especially when I went from Germany the first time outside my country, and I decided to play for Inter Milan. I left home, and we Germans, we have a bit the attitude that we expect things outside of Germany the way we have it in Germany, right? And so there was a moment that...
On time, well ordered.
Exactly,
right?
Okay, yes. So I had an experience, beginning of my time at Inter, where I had an appointment for getting my washing machine fixed, and the guy shows up 3 days later. And I tell him in my broken Italian, said, but we had an appointment 3 days ago. And he said to me, what's your problem? You want me to fix it or not to fix it? And I told them that little story the next day to my teammates in the locker room. I thought I'm kind of funny, I don't know, making a joke or whatever. But obviously my Italian was not very good in the beginning. And so I explained that, and they took it, my teammates, my Italian teammates, they took that serious, as almost like an insult.
Yeah, personal.
Yeah, personal. So the guy got up, I don't know who it was from my team, and said, you know what? It's very simple, Jürgen, and right in my face and said, or you take us the way we are, or get the heck out of here.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, what did I do wrong now? And I was totally embarrassed, red in my face, and I sit back down in my spot, and I said, but before training, and I said, what? And then I understood, you know what? You have to learn to take the people the way they are, and not the way I want them to be.
The thing about you I respected as a coach is your ability that you could actually demonstrate what you wanted us to do, and the confidence that you gave us through your success that you had as a player, knowing that you've won a World Cup, you've won the Euros, and that you believed in us. That was something that just gave us a confidence, that gave us that belief, that little bit more of that mentality that we could do like bigger things, that we shouldn't be complacent. And there's so many times you have managers that will say, hey, do this, but they can't go and demonstrate what you want to do. And you could actually get out there. And for me, that's what connected me with coaches, them being able to talk the talk, but also walk the walk.
The same was to me. And when I won the World Cup or the Euros, they had Beckenbauer out there. Okay, he won everything that you can ever win. And then Bertie Vogts, also World Cup and European Championship winner. And especially with Beckenbauer, I was one of the younger kids winning the World Cup 1990 in our German team. And whenever I got nervous, I just looked outside and said, why are you getting nervous? He's there. Franz is there. Basically, it's almost like, he's just looking over you. It's just calming you down just with his presence. I said, he's done it all. It will be fine, Even if Maradona is on the other side, but you will be fine. You're going to win this game.
So did that affect you when he passed?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Franz Beckenbauer closed his eyes just recently, that was, for all of us in Germany, extremely, extremely sad day. It was because he was our emperor. He was our Kaiser from day one on when he played. From the early 70s, he won everything you can imagine to win. But his charisma, his way of treating people, when he was my coach, I always watched him. When he talked to little kids or to people, he always took his time. He was so social. He was so well-mannered. You know, it was just top class.
Good character.
And he was always there for you. So even years later, you know, you always saw him here and there in certain events where you crossed paths, and he felt like it's almost like a father figure to you. It was for us an extremely sad moment. The entire team and the entire soccer population in Germany, but far beyond the soccer people.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about Diego Maradona?
I always try to describe Diego Armando Maradona as an artist. You have these world-class players. You know, at his time, Mateus, my teammate, was on his level. You know, Gullit, Van Basten, you know, these guys. But there was only one artist among all of these extremely good world-class players. That was Diego. Because Diego was, the way he read the game and the way he was able to technically execute the game was just completely, it was from God. It was a different dimension, you know, and understanding his life that he had then in Napoli, in Italy, because I lived in there at the same time, understanding that he never could leave the house because people would go nuts on the streets. He could never go into a coffee shop and have an espresso. He could never have a nice meal with his family somewhere in a restaurant. Drove in basically in the corner, and that drove him into drugs. And that makes the whole other side of the story so sad, you know, that he could not have a normal life. And then eventually went in all these things that he did, and that's why he passed so early. But he was just a different planet of a player.
Is there a story you could share on Clint? We've all, you know, experienced Clint firsthand here in this set. He's a character.
Well, I just always loved the way he smells things. Smells things meaning now he smells the.
Say, man.
He
got some nice cologne on or something.
Smells the game, meaning he always knew how to be in the right spot at the right time so early, so quick, you know. Then the technique that he had to execute, you know, and you just become an admirer of his technical abilities and finishing things off, and also in a certain way his character. He's yeah, you speak your mind. You speak your mind, and he's also able to tell you something that you maybe don't want to hear in that moment, but he says it. And that's what I always admired at him. He's straight out. And when he moved from Fulham to Spurs, in a certain way, I kind of lived it through me again a little bit, because I'm a Tottenham kid in a certain way, because I played for the club twice and had probably my most emotional season ever in the jersey of Tottenham in 94, 95. And I kind of felt his year there kind of through him a little bit. I badly wanted him to do well there, because at one end I said, you know, coming as an American player to that club, and he already proved himself in the Premier League anyway with Fulham, but I lived that even more because he was now at a place where I really enjoyed so much.
What was the emotional year in Tottenham, that year that you speak of? What was some of the things?
Well,
when you were playing there,
I kind of, when it came to changing clubs, for me, it's pretty much even as a coach too, things happened often overnight, which I didn't expect, you know. Tottenham I played for AS Monaco, and I fell out with Arsene Wenger. We had a little argument, and I said, okay, then I move on. And he says, oh, give me a club that gives me a transfer fee. And so I talked to Atletico Madrid, I talked to Genoa at that time, and then suddenly I get a phone call sitting in my apartment there, from Alan Sugar, at those days was the chairman of Spurs. Oh, I'm here at Monte Carlo on my yacht, and we want to offer you a contract at Tottenham, you know. And I said, Tottenham is London, right? London, that sounds interesting, that's cool. And so what with Tottenham was then the case that, okay, I won the World Cup, and we played the semifinals against England, and the English were mad at us, and they said, you know, a couple of fouls on me, were no fouls. They said they called me a diver,
oh, yeah,
and all that stuff. And I had no idea about that stuff. So I got to basically the deal was announced, and I got to London, and this whole story came out, the diver, and I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine in Monaco then told me, you know, I lived in England a couple of years, and what all they want is that you add something to it. You know, don't be offended. Never be offended with English people. You know, they want to just crack you up. They want to make a joke. It said, okay, that's new to me, and okay. Comes the first game of Spurs, and we went to Sheffield Wednesday, and in front of the stadium, when the bus arrived, thousands of Sheffield Wednesday fans held up signs, 5.8, 5.7, 5.9s. Saying, the diver is coming.
Yeah.
And my teammates on the bus, they freaked out. They were laughing like crazy. I said, what are you laughing about? Oh, this is all for you, Jürgen. Enjoy that one. I said, what does it mean? I said, that's about because diving.
Score.
And then my teammate up front, you know, my partner up front was Teddy Sheringham.
Yeah.
And Teddy came up and says, I got an idea. You score today, we're all going to do a dive. And that's what happened. And I scored in that game, and I see the whole team running towards me, and I understood, oh, we're all going to dive in front of the Sheffield Wednesday fans, you know. Then he had that time he had a little boy, and next game came up against Everton, and his little son came up to him and said, please tell Jürgen, if he scores again, he has to do the dive again, because us kids, all we do is now in the parks, we dive after every goal we score. And I said, come on now, it's one time a joke is fine, you know. But I said, and I scored a bicycle kick against Everton. And so the whole...
A bicycle kick like that, right?
Kind of like that, yeah. And so that was then... but the nice thing was I learned about myself, to make fun about myself, you know, because I thought first they mean it mean, but they didn't. They
you thought it was disrespect.
Yeah, but they just wanted to joke
Banter.
with you. Yeah, they wanted to, hey, come on, give me something on top of that, you know? And I was not used to that with my culture where I came from. And so I learned that, and then I learned to deal with the English completely different, and became part of them, and I felt so at home there in that neighborhood. I also enjoyed and then scored plenty of goals because I was happy. That's when you score goals.
Yeah.
That's when you're happy. Huh?
That's a good story. I like that. We appreciate your time so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
No,
man.
thanks for having me.
We've put you in a
so much.
sauna for the last hour and a half.
Yeah,
We are
it's
so
hot
sorry.
here.
It's so hot here. Can I give you a hug?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks again, bro. Appreciate you.
Stay strong. You too, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this episode of Kickin It, then don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to enjoy more raw and unfiltered content from me and the boys.